Welcome to another episode of Inmate Tea with AMP. I'm your host, April, and my wonderful co-host, Jailhouse Lawyer Pig, is on the phone, and we are ready to bring you another informative episode on transformation. Today, we have Kristopher Shipley on the phone from a North Carolina prison who was once a member of Dead Man's Inc., or DMI, which is a predominantly white organized crime enterprise that was known for its involvement in drug trafficking, murder, assault, and intimidation. But today, Kristopher Shipley joins us to share his story and what led him to leave the organization and life of crime behind. Welcome, Chris.
Hello, how are
We are good. We're glad to have
Wonderful.
you on. We're excited to hear your story. And if you could start us out with a little bit of your upbringing and what led you to join this organization and, have a life of crime that ultimately led you to prison.
Yeah, sure. First, I just want to thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys taking this up, giving me this opportunity to speak with you. So I'm a Baltimore-born native. My mother, she was actually from the west side of Baltimore. We grew up more in the south side of Baltimore, but I literally predominantly, my residencies were really in that southwest area. For about my first 10 or 14 years, her and my father, they were together for a few years. They really split ways when I was about 3 or 4 years old. And it was really rough, growing up for a while until my mother really got herself situated and she was able to get remarried. There was a lot of really hard times, her being a single mother and doing everything that she possibly could to raise myself and my sister, who was just about 4 years younger than I am. So we went through a lot of hard times, a lot of struggles. She did the absolute best that she could to provide for us until once she got remarried, and this other guy, he also had a son and a daughter, and then we had a little bit more of a family setting. But my father was absent through all of it. He was not a very good individual. He didn't provide. He didn't fulfill any of the obligations of a father for me. The only thing that he ever did was, that was where I got my introductions to drugs and alcohol. He had his own issues that he was dealing with. So there were points and times where I would spend, maybe weekends or a couple of days here and there or a couple of weeks during the summer with him. He lived in PG County. It's down towards D.C. area. And he was a partier. He went out every single night. He left me home alone. I would stay in the house as a young boy and, fend for myself. There wasn't a lot of food in the house, and he would come home late at night, and, he didn't have a problem with, hey, come out here, wake me up, even as being a little young boy, 11, 12 years old, and hey, here, take these drinks, and do a little bit of that. So I literally was introduced to drugs and alcohol, cocaine, weed, and alcohol at around 11 or 12 years old because of him. So that was kind of how it got started. We moved, my mother, when we moved out of the city, we moved into the county when I was about 13 or 14 years old, so I kind of got a little bit of separation from that city lifestyle. But we still, for me, I still bounced, I gravitated back to that. That was kind of like my comfort zone, was going back in there and just hanging out with those guys. It was where I kind of got my, even as a child, the little bit of acceptance that I did feel that I was gaining was from those guys in the streets. We were hanging out and we were, just doing boy stuff, just natural boy stuff, just running around, busting stuff up and getting into fights and drinking and messing with girls at a young age. So, for me, that was my comfort zone. That was what made me feel good, was doing those things, even though she was trying to get me away from all of that. By moving us out of the city and get us into a better environment and saying, hey, let us try to provide for you guys and give you something better, for yourselves. It was, for me, I just constantly ran back into the city to be around with these guys and just cut up and just be a fool. So, once I got about 16, and I got my first car, of course, they helped with trying to get me my first vehicle, and, being able to get out there. I still did the same thing. I ran back. So that was for whatever reason, when I was young, like the only thing that was alluring to me was being in the streets. Even though she was married to this new guy, that fatherly figure wasn't there for me the same as it is for so many other people. So I gravitated towards those guys that were a little bit older than me. They were already in the streets. They were doing what they were doing. That's what was like, quote unquote, attractive to me. Like that's where, all of my attention was at. Like I wanted to be like those guys, that were doing the things that they were doing, selling drugs and running around and always had the nicer cars, and the nicer clothes and the prettier girls. Those were the things that were interesting and attractive to me. So that's what I did for several years. I bounced around from one job to the next. Yeah. So like I said, when I got my first vehicle, actually the first couple, that I went through, like I still like that gave me the freedom to kind of run right back to what my mother was trying to get me away from. I think she was able to see those signs and see the behaviors and knew what was in store for me. So that was their way of saying, okay, we've got to get, because my stepbrother at that time, he was only 11 days older than I was, so we were basically like identical. So we were running around, we were doing stuff together. But for me, like it was like I was much more aggressively active into that street lifestyle. Like that was just it just grabbed a hold of me so quickly. So as soon as I started getting vehicles, like I was immediately wanting to go right back into that. So I spent several years, chasing that. And, the ironic part is that no matter how much that I was embraced by those guys, no matter how many girls that it was it was never enough, like I just couldn't fulfill it. And then once I acquired a certain level or a certain status within the neighborhood, or I had a certain amount of money or a certain vehicle, like I just chased that next step. It just never was as fulfilling enough to me. And what it turned into over the years, and I didn't realize this until such a later point, was that like I never really received that validation that I was looking for. I never really got that full acceptance. Like I never felt worthy of the people that I was around, or those that loved me and actually cared for me. Like I always just felt like I was still behind, like I was still chasing after something. Like I was trying to gain so much in materialistic ways. I was trying to elevate myself to such a status in life that I would finally feel like I was worthy to be around these particular types of people. I was worthy of the love and the embrace that I was getting, the attention I was getting from others, that the girls that I were with, that they would feel, that I would feel, that they wanted to really be around me for me and not just the things that I had. And I just chased that my whole life, and I just never got it.
Let me ask you now, a lot of these things that you're saying, I can relate to, because I was that same kid, except in the country. I wanted to go. My mom moved me away from where we were from to get me away from the street life. But one neighborhood turned into another neighborhood, and it was just as bad. And I went to the streets and looked up to those guys in the streets because my dad wasn't there. So I was chasing the love of my dad, looking at these other guys. Then when it become girls, I chased the love in the women, in the drug selling, in the street life that I had strived to get at home from my dad. Then, with my mom being a single parent, she had to go to work. So my mom was away, and it was like that feeling of wanting to be just wasn't there. So I went searching for it somewhere else. And, that's what it sounds like you were doing as well. And then when you finally obtained the money, the cars, the girls, the people around you, it was like, I got it. Now I'm just still feeling the same. So, it's kind of like you had to learn to love yourself to get out of your own way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why when I got to prison in my first major incarceration, this is in 2000, or by the time I actually get onto the compound, it's like the end of 2000. So I'm 25 years old at this time. I get into the cell, and that's when I met Rock. Who was one of the founders of DMI. Okay, so I think that's what made it so easy for me to dive headfirst into Dead Manic. I move into a cell with a guy who, one, is extremely influential. is extremely manipulative, but in a really presentationally positive way. So I come into to my first major prison sentence. I've got an active at least 10-year. I got a 20-year sentence with 10 of it suspended. So I'm young. I'm very impressionable, and I don't have any really male role models in my life. And I move in the cell with this guy that's like 6'4", 6'5", 300 and some plus pounds, of solidness, who has multiple unsolved bodies, even at this point, right? And he's, very, very caring and giving, and hey, let me teach you a way. You don't bang. You're not anything. Do you want to be a part of something that's bigger than you? Do you want some dudes that are really going to love you and teach you, a better way? Absolutely. Of course I do. I've been searching for this my whole life, for somebody to show me what it is that I want to be, which is a man, right? I want to be looked at as like I'm a man. So it's easy for me to be like, absolutely, and embrace it to its fullest. And that's what I did. I had guys that were willing to, that didn't even really know me, that are now embracing me every time that they see me. They're, hey, are you good? Do you need anything? Come on, let's hit this weight pile. Hey, read these 48 laws of power. Read this art of war. Read these strategies. Let me teach you, how to become a better man than you are now, or how to even become a man, period. So I'm growing physically. My mind is getting stronger. I'm being embraced by these guys. So, of course, now I'm ready to, whatever you need. I'm dying for these dudes. I'm finally getting the validation, because, there's days in a row that go by that my phone, when I'm in the streets, don't nobody hit my phone up. These dudes are banging down my door every single day. Every time the door pops, they're at the door. What's up? You good? Come on, let's go outside. I'm getting the attention, that I've been wanting my entire life. So it's really easy to embrace that particular lifestyle and be extremely loyal to it as well. So I got very consumed in that for several years. It wasn't negative to me at that point. I didn't see the downside of it. The things that we were doing, I just assumed were at that particular time. That's part of what's going on right now. I'm in prison. I'm young. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. But it's just what has to be done in order to get the things that I was getting from it. So it took me several years to really realize, just so many other guys too. I'm not the only one that was part of that realized later on, after several years of it, that this is not the way that life is supposed to be. I got a letter from a guy that was in another jail, that literally just the letter itself, and introducing himself to me. I was greeted with a SORT team, admin pending investigation now because of a letter. So that's just how serious it was, and still, like, it just didn't register at that particular time that this is what I was getting myself into.
Yeah. How long would you say that you were affiliated?
Probably about, let's see, that was in 2001, so about 7 or 8 years actively.
Okay.
That label, unfortunately, whether it's, you're flagged, or whether you're validated, whether you're active or whether you're inactive, the unfortunate part of it is that labeling, is never really going to fully go away, right? No matter where I go, I'm going to carry that with me. My actions, obviously, the way that I live my life now is going to show that I'm no longer, an active participant, but that labeling is still always going to be there. That's just something that's just, it's just really difficult to actually fully remove from who you are, especially when you're part of, the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, there's a lot of young men that's in your situation today in prison, and a lot of young men, they are thirsting for the same thing that you're thirsting for. And the same thing was brought to me when I come to prison. And, I just didn't accept it in the way that you did by joining something, but I accepted it by the camaraderie, because it made you feel like somebody really cared about you. Somebody was going to be there for you. Even in the streets, even when I was in the streets, I was around older guys that, some of them tried to give me good advice, but they were also saying, here, take these drugs and go sell them. Here, take this gun and walk around with it. because it made me feel like I was somebody. I was learning how to be a man the only way I could learn to be a man, because my dad wasn't there. So I understand what you're saying, why you accepted these people and gravitated to these types of people, because you see them doing certain things, and in your mind, you got a perception of what a man is. You really don't know that a man is somebody that can stand up for themselves, but the first thing they do is walk away from strife before they attack it. A man is somebody that takes care of their kids and going to be there for their kids when their kids need them most. A man is somebody that can take care of home, work, and, do what he needs to do to be there for his women folk and his children. A man's not somebody that walks around with a gun, sells drugs, and hurts people all day. But that's what we understood as men at that time.
You're absolutely right. I remember there was a time, and I can tell you it's 2010. I can tell you exactly where I was at a particular time. I had my own house. My truck was paid for. I had a motorcycle that was paid for. I had a little boat that was outside on a trailer. I had several $1,000s worth of tools. I had all these things. Every room had a big flat screen in it. I was paying every single one of my bills. I was also, putting 10 to 12 perk 30s in my face, along with the girl that was living with me. Was doing the same thing every single day. But you couldn't tell me anything because to me, I was handling all of my responsibilities. So how dare you tell me, that what I'm doing is wrong when I'm living my life perfectly according to my plan?
Yeah.
So Chris, was there a pivotal moment that you would say you came to the realization that you didn't want that affiliation anymore?
It wasn't anything specific. There was a period of time over several years that I knew that what I was doing, I knew that the people that I was choosing to have in my life were leading me in the direction that I didn't want to go in. Right? I knew that it was pivotal that I actually continued to play my part. But it just wasn't in my heart anymore. Like, I had just grown to a point to where I knew that, like, if I wanted to have a successful life, if I wanted to be able to raise my family, some of the things that Pig just said, if I wanted to be that man, I can't love and have a loyalty to an organization and a child and a wife and a mother at the same time. I just can't. There's no way that I can say I love you and I'm going to do anything that I possibly can to make sure that your life is the way that it's supposed to be, and then also go out into the streets with these dudes and do exactly what it is that they need me to do. Yeah. I can't go out and say, hey, I'll strap up. We're going to go do what we got to do because I'm going to make sure that your life and safety is where it's supposed to be. Because then who am I? I got to choose. I can't do both at the same time. I can't be loving and loyal to both at the exact same time because somebody's getting the short end of the stick.
Yeah.
So for me, it was just about getting away from that and just knowing that, that this is only going to catch me a RICO. This is only going to send me back to prison. And then I've completely disregarded the children that I've brought into the world, the girl that stayed by me for the years, that, my mother who's been relentlessly by my side since, since my conception, so then that is complete and total disregard to them. They've been standing by me for all of these years, and then I go and do some stuff with these guys, and then next thing you know, I'm back in prison, and I'm doing 20 years over what?
Yeah.
It just didn't make sense anymore. Even now, it's one of the biggest struggles that I have doing this particular bid is that I had worked so diligently to build a particular life for myself and those around me. And then I got selfish and I did some things that I wasn't supposed to do. And now I'm back in prison again. And those people are still there for me, even through all of the things that I did, what I put them through, while I was out there. When I started doing bad again and then things went wrong, even when I went on the run, those people were still there for me, and they're still there now. And I chose to, I made a conscious decision, even though I was extremely intoxicated, I made a conscious decision to do something that took me away from them when they needed me the most.
Yeah.
And I have to carry that every single day, knowing that while they're out there struggling, while I'm on the phone with my kid's mother, and I can feel, the level of frustration that she has, the level of stress that she carries on a day-to-day basis because she's out there by herself with my son, doing what she can to make it so that they make it from one day to the next in the best way possible, that I'm sitting in prison and I'm not supposed to be here. Not because I didn't do anything wrong, but because I was supposed to make better decisions.
Yeah.
She was pregnant when I caught this charge, and she went back to Baltimore, and then I went on the run back up there, and she was still there, like, okay, cool, I'm going to help you. So I spent those first couple of months with my son during that time, right before I got caught and came down here to start serving the sentence. But, I feel all those energies through the phone, and it shouldn't be like that, So when I want to get mad at her, when we're on the phone and she's got a serious attitude problem and she's stressed out, and I want to just be like, dude, why are you acting the way that you're acting? She may not be doing these things if I was actually there, like I was supposed to be, helping her raise the child that I brought into the world. But instead, I only thought about myself. I put a pistol in a man's throat, and now I'm doing prison time for it.
Yeah. How long of a sentence did you get?
65 to 90 for 3 counts of armed robbery and a firearm by felon.
When do you expect to be released from prison?
So I have about 17 months left, so January of 27.
Okay, well then that's not too long. In all this time that you've been incarcerated, are there times that you see young guys come into prison that are kind of following the same path you did?
Every day, all day.
Do you try and talk to them?
Yep.
Try and get them to open their eyes?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely had a lot of conversations with a lot of guys, a lot of younger guys. Especially like when they get into those mid-20s, they're more reasonable. It seems like this younger generation now, and I was just talking about this morning with the guy in the canteen line. But just how different things are. He's my age. I'll be 50 in just a couple of weeks. This younger generation, they're not open for advice or suggestion. They become extremely defensive and take it as some type of a disrespect if you just try to show them a different way. So it has to be very strategic in the way that you approach some of these guys. But you can tell that when the ones that really want it, you can kind of catch those signs or those characteristics that just say, hey, look, I'm really looking for it. I mean, those are the ones that I kind of trying to hone in on, and just kind of just give them my story, just kind of like what we did just here just now, and just talk and say, hey, look, I know this, it's such a cliche thing, it's like, hey, don't do what I've been doing my entire life, but just let me at least explain to you why you shouldn't be doing these things, or there is a better way. Don't be like everybody else, make some real change in your life, because the numbers are growing. It seems now, and I really blame it on us as men that continue to father these children. These boys, I can't speak for women, but there's so many of us men that have brought boys into the world, and then we don't stick around. We just hightail it in the other direction, and we leave these women to raise our children. And then you wonder why they come in here. They didn't have any more guidance. They've got less guidance, from men that I had when I was growing up, that you had when you were growing up, big. And then here they sit. Yeah. And then this is all that that they learn, and the cycle just continues. So we, as men, it's like we really need to step up and take responsibility for not only our own actions, but to make sure that we can father these boys and teach them what it's like to be real men, and not this, that this isn't what it's about. That get the job, focus on a career, a trade, get yourself into college, do whatever it is, take care of your responsibilities, do the things that you say that you're supposed to, that you're going to do, follow through with all of them, pay your bills, all of those types of things that need to be done that we just never learned until it was, not to say that it's too late, but, at such a unfortunate, later time in life.
Yeah, there definitely seems to be a correlation between absent parent homes and children that grow up to go into incarceration. Even if we do a consensus right now between the three of us that are on this call, you and Pig both had absent fathers in your life, and you're both incarcerated. I had a very hands-on father and mother that stayed together, still together, and, I never have been in trouble, ever.
Right.
Which
one of y'all
Go ahead, Chris.
Even in the streets, and then also in here, I get uncomfortable when I get around people that have both their parents in their life. just the same as I do in here. When guys start talking about their fathers, I start to shy away. It's uncomfortable. I don't know how to deal with those types of things. So even when I meet a girl and she's got a good family and she's never been in any trouble, I already know that I'm definitely wrong for you, and I'm going to haul ass across the other side of the room. We don't even have anything to talk about. There's nothing for us to talk about other than the differences.
Yeah.
So I definitely feel out of place.
Chris, I can relate. I can relate because, like, my dad was there for the first 10 years of my life. But it was a hard 10 years. It was a very abusive 10 years. And, when you're sitting down, you're talking to someone, they have their dad in their life. Like, I can talk to April, and she'll tell me how her and her dad and their mom and their sister went on vacations and done things. And I can't relate because I'm just sitting here being quiet because the only person I had was my mom, and my mom was at work. And I'm pretty sure that's how you were. When you had your mom, it was for spurts and periods of time because she had to work to take care of y'all. And, I understand how you say you can get very uncomfortable because, I talk to these young men in here, and a lot of these young men don't never say, hey, my dad's sending me this. My dad's going to do this for me. My dad is in prison. That's what a lot of them say. My dad's out there on the streets doing drugs. It's mom, 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 mom. So, as you said a while ago about these young men that you sat down and talked to, I spent a lot of time trying to mentor these children that's coming in here because I see myself in them. So I want to be part of the change and the transformation of the narrative because these young men that's coming in here 19, 20, 21, 22 doing these skid bids, they got kids out there, and their kids are sitting there wondering where their daddy is at. Otherwise, their daddy's in prison, or their daddy's out messing with another woman, cheating on their mom, or their dad's out in the streets selling drugs. They're not there being fathers and teaching these kids, whether it's little boys or little girls, teaching these little girls what it means to have a real father, a real role model man in their life, teaching these young boys how to be men, how to be industrious, how to love themselves and love their mothers. That's what we're lacking. And that's what, no matter how good a mother takes care of her kids and whether the mom and dad can be together, it's important for that dad to show those kids that he loves them too, because them kids are starving for a love from their dad that they could never get from anywhere.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Chris, for coming on and bringing up this. And it's not just the men. We're not just targeting the men out there about them being absent. Women have a role in this too. Us women have to be careful about who we choose to procreate with. If a man's not devoted to you, then he's not going to be devoted to children with you either. So there's room for a lot of improvement on both ends. And we need to do it for the children.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We need to do it for our futures. Because y'all gotta understand out there, the kids that we bring up today is the kids that's going to take care of us tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get old. We're all going to get old, no matter if you want to accept it or not, Miss April.
My middle name ain't young for no reason.
When we do get old, our kids is the ones that's got to take care of us. So everybody here, listen and take heed.
Okay, well, thank you, Chris, for coming on. We've enjoyed this interview with you.
Well, I thank you guys. I really appreciate this opportunity. Hopefully something that I said today was able to resonate with, or at least relate to, someone else out there. If it's able to help make some change for them, then this was well worth the opportunity just in and of itself. I just really appreciate you guys. I want to just say, that I really appreciate my mother for everything that she has done for me to help me all the way up to this day. To Stacy, my baby's mother, I know the struggle is real. I know you absolutely cannot stand me a majority of the time throughout your 24 hours of each day, but I love you nonetheless. You take care of our son well. I'm extremely proud of what you've accomplished and where you're at with yourself today. If you've never believed it any time before, please believe it now. Again, April and Pig, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate everything that you guys do for all of us still incarcerated. For those of us that are out there on the streets, what you guys do is extremely powerful. It really means a lot to a lot of people. Every chance that I get, I talk to people about you guys. So know that you're not silent here at Stanford. That's for sure.
Thank you so much, Chris.